If democracy were a person, what would its annual health checkup look like? Well, the latest global report is in, and let's just say the diagnosis is complicated. We've got some really worrying symptoms, but also some surprising signs of resilience. So let's walk through the results of that checkup together.
All right, let's get right to the headline number. In 2024, for every single country that was making democratic progress, nearly two were actually slipping backward. And you can see it right there. 94 countries saw their democracy decline in at least one key area. Only 55 saw improvement. That's the core problem we're looking at here. This isn't just a few isolated cases, it's a widespread trend.
So, to really understand this health crisis, you need a consistent way to measure it, right? You need to check the vital signs. And that's exactly what this report does. It gives us a framework to see precisely where the sickness is setting in.
And here they are, the 4 vital signs of democracy. First up, representation. Basically, do governments actually reflect the will of the people? Second, you've got rights. Are those fundamental freedoms we all talk about, like speech and assembly, actually protected? Third is the rule of law. Is everyone, and I mean everyone, accountable to the law? And finally, participation. Are people getting involved? Are they actively engaged? We're going to use these 4 pillars to figure out what's going wrong. Okay, so let's look at the symptoms. And this is where things get pretty concerning. Of those 4 vital signs we just talked about, 3 of them are flashing red. Let's dig into the evidence for each one.
The first major symptom, a serious breakdown in representation. We're talking about that fundamental link between you, the voter, and the people you elect. And that link, well, it's getting weaker and weaker.
Now, check out the paradox on this slide, because this is wild. 2024 was a huge year for elections. 74 countries went to the polls. You'd think that would be a massive win for democracy, right? But the reality? The actual scores for representation completely collapsed, hitting their lowest point in over 2 decades. So more voting did not mean more voice. Symptom number 2 is just as alarming: the steady erosion of our fundamental rights. These are the civil liberties that are supposed to be the absolute bedrock of a free and open society. And if you want to know how serious this is, just look at this quote. The data shows that freedom of the press suffered its most widespread global decline since they started tracking this stuff way back in 1975. Think about that. This isn't just a bad year. It's a historic downturn, hitting almost a quarter of all countries on Earth.
Okay, our third symptom hits another core democratic idea, the rule of law. It's a simple concept, really, that nobody, not the average citizen, not the richest CEO, not even the president, is above the law. And right now, that very idea is under attack.
The case of El Salvador shows just how complicated this gets in the real world. On one hand, the government's crackdown has led to a jaw-dropping drop in the murder rate, and it is massively popular. But the cost? Wow. The highest incarceration rate in the world, suspended rights, mass trials. It really forces you to ask a tough question. How much freedom are people willing to trade for security? All right, I know, so far the diagnosis looks pretty grim. But that is not the whole story. The checkup also found a surprising source of strength, a real glimmer of hope where democracy is actually pushing back. So while representation, rights, and the rule of law are all trending down, that 4th vital sign, participation, has stayed remarkably stable. And this is so important. It means that even as institutions are getting weaker, people are not giving up. They're still out there protesting, organizing, and getting involved. It's like democracy's immune system kicking in. And this isn't just some abstract idea. Look at this example from Brazil. The government created a platform for people to submit ideas for its national plan. The result? Over 8,000 citizen proposals were written directly into national policy. That right there is what resilience looks like in action. Now, beyond those 4 vital signs, the report does a deep dive into one of the biggest forces shaping our world today, and by extension, our democracies: migration. This is, without a doubt, a defining challenge of the 21st century. And to get a sense of the scale here, just look at this number: 304 million people. That's how many people are living outside the country where they were born. That's a population bigger than the entire United States, and that figure has tripled since the 1970s. So where are all these people going? Well, this chart might actually surprise you. The popular story is often about people moving across the globe, right? But the data shows something different. A whopping 65% of people move within their own region. Another 25% just move to a neighboring one. The world is on the move, for sure, but a lot of times it's just to the country next door. And all of this movement creates what experts call a boundary problem for democracy. In a world where so many people live and work and pay taxes outside their home country, it raises a fundamental question. Who gets a say in how that country is run? Let's just put it out there directly. Should a citizen who lives in another country, maybe for years, maybe for decades, still have the right to vote in their home country's elections? This is a really tough question, and democracies all over the globe are struggling to find an answer.
The technical term for all this is out-of-country voting, or OCV for short. It's basically all the laws and systems, things like mail-in ballots or letting people vote at embassies that make it possible for citizens abroad to cast their vote. And let me tell you, the debate around OCV is fierce. On one hand, supporters say it reinforces a sense of national unity, it recognizes the huge economic contributions people send home, and hey, it's a basic democratic right. But on the other hand, critics push back hard. They argue these voters aren't directly affected by the results, turnout is often super low, and the whole thing is just way too expensive and complicated to manage. There are definitely no easy answers here.
Which brings us to our final big question. As more and more people cross borders for all sorts of reasons, from conflict to climate change to opportunity, this issue is only going to get more urgent. And it forces us to ask something really fundamental. In a world on the move, where exactly do the boundaries of a democracy get drawn?